this. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start the meeting promptly tonight because we have a very full agenda, as always, and we want to make sure we have enough time to get through all of the items. I just want to thank everyone for coming and note how great it is to see all of the civic democracy going on in the hallway and in the parking lot. And Jen reminded me of my favorite quote, and it means to all of you here tonight, is the world is run by those who show up. So thank you all for being here. And with that, Kaylee, I'd like to have you do roll call.
Yes.
Here.
Vice Chair Zabriskie. Well.
Here.
Awesome. At this point, I'd like to open for public comment for anything not on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to make public comment, please come. Do we want them up at the podium? Oh, no, we can pick up the sound. So please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
I drove by. So that was.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we consent calendar. Have a social media recap, and it was provided in your packet. I'll just read. The recommended action is that the River Revitalization Steering Committee receive a report from East River PR regarding the reach of a R2SC video recently shared by the town on Facebook and Instagram. Would any member of the committee like to pull the item from consent? Staff? Public? Seeing none, I would call for a motion. Second? We'll give that to you.
Jan and Jana.
Yeah, I can't go wrong. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Presentation staff.
Just one update and maybe one point of clarification. So tonight, the last agenda item is the review of the RFI and feedback from the RFI. If you are recusing yourself from the RFI, what that means is you have a conflict, either an actual conflict or a perception of. I would caution anybody that is considering being part of a application submission form. Certainly if you're a property owner and you're intending to apply or submit an interest form, or if you are a business owner that believes they may want to partner with their property owner in some Just be conscious of the perception of a conflict of interest. With this recusal, because we are looking at the details of the RFI, you will have to leave and your meeting will be over for the night since it's the last item. That's why we put it on the last item. There is a narrow window in which you could provide public comment. You'd have to leave, come back in for public comment only. You can't be part of the presentation in any way. And that's state law with the Brown Act. Wanted to clarify that. Looks like there's some information up on the board. We wanted to start with that tonight so you can be thinking about if you are recusing, what that looks like for your evening, or if you want to recuse or not. So heads up, think about that. Also wanted the public to have a chance hear that as well. We can reiterate that as we open, but we want to be really cautious about that. And Tim, I did see your hand. 1 second. Mr. Hendrickson, thanks for showing up again. I did just want to clarify that with public comment, we aren't allowed to take any action on that because it's not agendized. It doesn't mean that we haven't heard you. So it's kind of, we've been hearing a lot of different comments. We haven't been able to get to them all, but we have heard you. So thank you for coming in.
River Street that could be tied into some of this, but it's just in relation to that RFI, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, we'll repeat that when we open the item. I just thought it was important that you all have a chance to start thinking through that as we get to that item and what that looks like. That's all of our stuff.
Thank you. So we're going to move into the River Corridor mixed-use designations. This off.
Yes, so our primary focus of our agenda tonight is to work through those potential uses in terms of thinking of mixed use within what's currently the mixed use land use designation shown in the 2040 general plan. So I think it is a good point where you can see this in the image in the upper right-hand corner. This is, if you look at the dark red cross-hatched white area, this is the area that's identified within the 2040 general plan as future land use designation of riverfront mixed use. It doesn't currently have zoning attached to it, so the work that we're asking the committee to do is to consider, what types of uses would be permitted, and then what types of uses might be permitted if there's some conditions or additional guidelines to them, and then what types of uses we don't want to, the committee doesn't want to permit within this group. And you all went through a very detailed list of 100 different uses. We will go through those tonight. When we go through those, I think we can also think a little bit higher level of what's the intent that we want to see out of this mixed use district. And then to the question that has been posed, we are looking right now just at this area. We can then move to the downtown mixed use area, and if there's other areas that we want to then identify as being mixed use that weren't currently identified in the 2040 general plan. But just to be able to put some sideboards on us tonight, we're really just focusing on the area that had been identified as a future land use designation for riverfront mixed use, which really extends from the Donner Creek area to essentially the McIver Road. Also, so for some background, it was suggested that we bring forward the language from the 2040 general plan that you can see on the screen here. That goal behind the riverfront mixed-use land use designation, which is to transform the West River District into a live, work, recreate district that provides public access to the Truckee River, supports the local economy, and provides a variety of housing types. Within that goal, it also referenced 5 other previous goals. So those goals, you can see below, relate to efficient and sustainable land use patterns, relate to residential uses and the desire to provide residential uses and meet residential needs through the town, to provide commercial and mixed use development, to consider industrial uses, the relationship between the industrial uses goal and the actions and policies under industrial uses really related to making sure that there was potential industrial sites throughout the town. So as we're thinking about businesses that are interested in relocating, that there's a place for those throughout the town. And then 5, that there's public services and infrastructure as well. So within this land use designation, the overall goal that had been established through the general plan. So as I mentioned, each of you are able to provide, go through the list of 100 different uses. These uses are the uses that are currently listed in the zoning code. So within 7 different categories of the zoning code: agricultural resource and open space uses, there's manufacturing, industrial and processing type uses, there's recreation, education, and public assembly type uses, residential uses, retail trade, service, and transportation uses. So within those 7 categories, 100 different types of uses that you went through and looked at. We had 13 out of, I think, potentially 14 completed surveys, because we do have some refusals on identifying the types of uses. And then there were some areas where, although we had primarily 13 completed surveys, some people didn't identify a yes, no, maybe as throughout all of the uses. They had tagged them that there were some uses that they wanted to talk about as part of through the larger committee. So those options that each of you are able to consider as part of each of those uses was, yes, let's permit the use in the mixed-use zoning district because it really reflects the vision that I have for this mixed-use, riverfront mixed-use area. Or yes, and we were categorizing this as yes C, because it's yes with a condition, or yes that there might be some additional design guidelines that we'd like to consider if this use was permitted in this riverfront mixed-use zoning district. And then third option was don't permit the use. So with that, again, just to sort of think high level before we dive into the sort of the takeaways from everyone's responses, was that as we talk about the uses today, that we're really talking about, again, about those uses that are envisioned for the river corridor, just from Donner Creek Confluence to McIver. So we're just going to focus there today. We really want to talk about just the types of uses that are desired or may be permitted with specific guidelines. We don't want to talk today and get into the details about what those conditions might be or what the types of design guidelines might be. We can talk about those at another meeting. We just want to talk about generally, are we have general consensus about the types of uses that we want to see and those that we might not want to see. So we're going to confirm those areas of general alignment, and then we're going to probably focus in on where there are differences of opinions. And as we do that, we'll just remind everybody of the commitment that everybody made to the speak your piece idea in terms of our group dynamic, that we'll give everyone a time to be able to share a thought. We're going to capture your ideas so that we can have time for everyone to be able to express their ideas. But then, make sure we're listening. So speak your piece, but then also listen to others, and then be able to see how we can come to a consensus around those uses. So out of those 100 uses, there are some natural groupings that occurred in terms of how they ended up being grouped. So out of those 100, 28 of those uses really had everyone, all the 13 respondents said yes, either permit it outright, or yes, permit it with an additional guideline or an additional condition. 46 of those 100 uses, 70% or more of the 13 respondents said yes, permit it outright, or permit it with a condition of use. So about 3 or less people said no, don't permit it. And then we go into a third break, which is 8 of those 100 uses, where 30 to 40% of the respondents, which equals 4 to 5 of the respondents, said no, don't permit it. The next break is 6 to 8 of the 13 respondents said no, don't permit it, and that equated to about 10 of the uses. And then our final category grouping is that 9 or more of the respondents said no, this use doesn't really align with what I'm envisioning for the future for this portion of the riverfront corridor. So I'm going to walk through each of these groupings, and then we're going to take a pause and understand who would like to make a comment about specific types of uses that they want to see in terms of yes or yes with a condition or definitely no, and then we'll see how we might be able to shift some of the categories, or if we're good with what we've got. So out of that grouping, again, that all 13 respondents either said yes or yes with a condition. The yes you can see here is represented in green. So for example, the trails category, 12 of the 13 respondents said yes, trails should be permitted in this riverfront mixed use future zoning district, and one person said yes, they should be permitted, but think about a condition of use or design guideline. So you can see within this grouping, nature reserves, food and beverage distribution, beverage production and food production, libraries, museums, parks, playgrounds, public assembly uses, community centers, really all had that type of support of, yes, permitting or permit with an additional condition of use. Similarly, our next group, live work units, suite of residential uses, multifamily dwellings, junior accessory dwelling units, ADUs, multifamily dwellings that are for rent with individual ownership, single room occupancy housing, supportive housing, work-live units. I will note here, you can see that there's an asterisk near single room occupancy housing and supportive housing. There was a request that someone would like to talk about those, so we'll give that opportunity in just a few minutes. Next, you see a continued list. This list of uses moves more into some of the retail services uses with bed and breakfast inns, bike shares, ATMs, visitor centers, office types uses, outdoor dining, restaurants that have table service, different than other types of restaurants. Accessory retail uses, and an accessory retail use is where the retail use is an accessory to the primary use of the property. Retail stores, bars and drinking establishments, and grocery stores. You can also see a trend line between the yellow and green here, where there's starting to be a little bit of a shift as you get to the lower part of the list, with a little more weighted towards wanting to have some more design guidelines or conditions to the use as you move through. We next move to our second grouping, and this is our largest grouping with 46 of the 100 uses. Again, within this grouping, 70% or more of the respondents said yes, permit it, or yes, permit it with a condition or a design guideline, and then 3 or fewer respondents said that it shouldn't be permitted. Also noted in bold, you can see the trailhead and recreation area parking where the item appears in bold. Those were uses that currently are not permitted in the downtown mixed-use zoning district. So within the town code, currently there's the downtown mixed-use zoning district, which is further to the east than what we're talking about now. And the uses that you'll see in bold through this presentation are those that aren't permitted. But this use, trailhead, recreation area and parking, again, falls within this sort of second large grouping, where primarily support for including, with a little, a few people saying don't permit. I think the other question that had come up, the highlighted use structural clay pottery products, that one came up as a question, what is this, by a couple of people. That again is the production of, or the manufacturing of those types of materials, so manufacturing of bricks, and those types of materials. It's not the clay making or pottery.
Stephanie,
Or art, the artists.
the slide that's up is not matching with what you're speaking to right now. There we go.
There we go. I'll keep moving now.
It's all good.
A lot, thank you. Lindsay. Next group, and we also have, just for reference, the full list of all of those uses compiled on one sheet for ease of reference in the different categories. This group, so we have studios for art, dance, music, photography, health and fitness facilities, membership organization facilities, outdoor commercial recreation, theaters and event spaces, I think the question here, you can see the asterisk is really like, what type of theater are we talking about? Schools, public and private. There was a question about, maybe just private schools and not public schools, and then schools, specialized education and training. Our next group are residential type uses, employee housing, multifamily dwellings that are in a commercial industrial project, so already a little bit of a mixed use. Senior citizen congregate care housing, detached living areas, transitional housing, multifamily dwellings for rent that have 11 or more units, and then multifamily dwellings that are individual ownership, 11 and more units, and caretaker housing. We also have residential care facilities with 7 to 12 clients, animal raising and keeping of household pets, single family dwellings. This one also had a question if someone would like to talk about it a little bit, manufactured homes, emergency shelters that are accessory to a church, place of worship, secondhand stores, alcoholic beverage sales, other than beer, wine, convenience stores, furniture, furnishings, and equipment stores, plant nurseries and garden supply sales, restaurants that are fast food. That doesn't necessarily mean a drive-through, it's fast food convenience that you're at a counter purchasing your food. Outdoor sales, displays of merchandise, small and medium, personal services, hotels and motels, business support services, banks and financial services, and child daycare centers. Also within this grouping of support for inclusion, repair, maintenance on consumer type products, residential care facilities, studios that are secondary to the primary use, medical services such as clinics and laboratories, veterinary clinics, that includes animal hospitals, kennels and boarding, broadcasting studios, transit stops and shelters, and then transit stations and terminals. Next, we'll move to our third group. There's 8 of the 100 uses that fell into this group where 30 to 40% said no. So this is where we took from 4 of the 13 respondents had identified a no, 4 or more. That includes metal fabrication, machine and welding shops, transient rental that are single family dwellings, auto parts sales, child daycare that is large family daycare homes versus the previous child daycare, research and development, medical services and extended care, utility lines. I think the note here was a number of people said underground maybe, okay, which I think we've heard throughout other meetings this year, and wireless communication facilities. I think within this grouping you could also look at it another way, so 30 to 40% said no, so 4 or 5 of the 15 respondents said no, don't permit. But it also, on the flip side, 60 to 70% did say yes, or yes with a condition. Moving on to our fourth grouping. This is 6 or more of the 6 to 8 of the respondents said no, so 45 to 60% of the respondents said no, permitting this use is not part of their, what they envision for mixed use, the riverfront mixed use land use area. That includes recycling areas, reverse vending machines. And I'm not the code person, so I did not come up with these. Recycling, small collection facilities, outdoor sales and displays of merchandise, so large displays of merchandise that are outside, outdoor storage of merchandise, public safety and utility facilities, snow removal businesses that have a seasonal contractor's yard, repair or maintenance facilities that are vehicle-based, mortuaries and pipelines. And then finally, we have our fifth grouping, which 70% or more of the respondents said, again, no, the uses don't permit these uses within the riverfront mixed-use zoning area, including warehouse, retail stores, drive-in or drive-through restaurants, construction contractors' yards, outdoor storage and work areas, storage, personal storage facilities, commercial parking and vehicle storage, electric utility facilities, and tow yards. So looking through these, I think the other reminder is that this is looking forward, that it's not saying that these uses need to leave now. It's more, transitioning over time, that in the future, the types of uses that I think came forward as part of the survey respondents was more of, in the future, can we transition to more types of uses that don't have the outdoor storage component pieces as part of it? I think that would be a common thread to the types of uses that came up, or have, a need for, those types of support facilities that are outdoors. So before we get into discussion, and I'd like to hear from everyone, just again, our steps that we want to work through as we work through this list is, first, go around the group and take some short comments. Again, just to be able to time manage a little bit, we'd like to keep those comments to 3 minutes for this first round, and I will capture on the flip chart so we can keep those up in front of everyone. So, share your comments, and if you have a desire to pull any of the uses from one of those groups, you're like, oh, I can't believe this landed someplace. That's food for thought. But just remember to listen respectfully to others, because there's a lot of, I think there's potentially a lot of friction around what we could have as part of the conversation. So just to be respectful and to listen as well. We would like to see, I guess, as we move into step 2, if there is some general, consensus around those types of uses that seem like there were consensus around. And I would refer to those as those, uses in types 1 or groupings 1 and groupings 2 of, we seem to say yes, those types of uses should or could be permitted within within the riverfront mixed-use zoning. And then we'll move into those areas, that we want to look at. Is there consensus around the no's? Is there consensus, do we want to shift any of those other uses to one place or the other? And then are there other considerations, like sub-districts? So if you think about that riverfront mixed-use zoning area, are there some uses that would seem more appropriate, on the riverfront side, so south of West River Street, and some north of West River Street? So with that, I am going to pause and ask for, maybe we'll do a quick show of hands who would like to make a comment, and then we'll just go around the room. All right, Jan, we'll start here, and then we'll work our way around. Jan,
You're skipping beyond Zan.
well, I was looking for a quick show of hands if you wanted to chat.
Yes, okay, I'll raise my
first.
hand.
Okay.
If he's going to talk, I'll talk. You talk first, please.
My first impression after looking at all of these different categories is it struck me as some kind of historical accretion of different views over the course of history on what should be allowed where by different people in different places, and then we just assembled them all and made a list here. So it made it a little hard to say yes or no as I went through it. Partly in connection with that, I started thinking maybe we should be looking at form-based zoning rather than use-based, which the planners are familiar with. It would be a tremendous change in approach, and it would take a lot of other people to entertain this concept. But essentially, you would just be doing zoning based on the physical nature of the buildings, of the developments, and you wouldn't be looking at how the property is actually being used. You just say the building has to have this setback, so much square footage, can't be any taller than this, to be all structure, and it's advocated by the Strong Cities organization as a better way of promoting interconnectedness, all the happy talk that we have here in Truckee about making it a more livable place. And then the third thing, broadly speaking, I was trying to figure out where would Sierra Stone Supply fit into one of these categories, or the AT&T building, whatever goes on inside there, where does that fit? And then finally, on the utilities, I kind of want to defer to the PUD and the other utilities before saying you shouldn't have a facility there, because I see those as essential services. Those are my 2 comments.
Well, I'm glad that Janza went first, because one of the things I was gonna mention was that, at least in the general plan, from what I can glean here, and I remember from sitting through like 50 meetings of that there was focus on, if we were gonna consider this all as one zoning district, that it had to be considerably flexible, and that main concern I have is to create a situation where we exacerbate the non-conforming zoning and basically freeze some property owners from doing anything with their property. And so along those lines, I mean, having more of a form-based approach, I think, I'm not really sure why we're considering this as one monolithic zone, because it says riverfront, but a fair number of the acreage is definitely not riverfront and already has existing uses that are likely to be there as long as I live anyway. And so I think having a more flexible approach, it seems to me that if we're really concerned about riverfront, then you look at the riverfront specifically, and then the other areas you consider as separate, not necessarily sub-districts. To me, it's a misnomer to call it a riverfront, or I guess.
Riverfront mixed use.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's all.
That's great. Pam, do you have anything now?
Later, when you get into clarifying definitions, I have some comments.
I would just like to offer, I think Jan touched on it, the consideration of utility master plans as we start to kind of embark on an era with, pretty significant expansion in electric vehicles, electrification, data centers, charging stations. That I saw a couple categories on there, electric facilities, that's kind of a broad description, but in terms of our master planning to make sure that we can serve that corridor, it may require, I'm not suggesting that some major substation go on the river, but we may need additional transformer facilities and things of that nature. And then I saw pipelines in there, kind of the same comment. I don't really know what that characterizes, but we will have to have pipelines to deliver water to the community there.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, you're gonna take out the pipeline?
Different type of corridor.
Yeah.
Anything else, Brian?
I had some thoughts about kind of the general concept of single-family dwellings. They seem to be something that communities are phasing out of, and I'm wondering if we need to look at that concept specific to this area, perhaps on given the housing needs we have and sort of the trends of living situations, that looking more in detail at this idea of single-family dwelling being appropriate, maybe some more rural areas or something, but not in the urban core of the town. I don't want to give mine up.
I had a couple, which I wrote a note on when I filled the form out. One of them was I checked yes on most everything, or conditional approval, but I'm in the process of going through a minor use permit process in Truckee, and it's a lot of work, and especially when you don't even know what the answer is. You're just kind of throwing a dart in the dark and hoping that it's kind of what is wanted, or, so I just kind of along the lines of what Jan was saying, it's almost like the more flexible, but even like if there was gonna be some guidelines on something, on the aesthetics, cause I can see almost anything, like a fabricating shop or whatever that's, you know, considered, not, or most everybody said no, I could see that being a really cool ornamental or whatever little shop, you know, that people can walk in, and some blacksmiths working on stuff, you know, so, and it could be cool. So it's just, that's why I clicked yes on most everything.
I don't have anything yet.
Travis?
I don't know where to start. The problem is, what people don't want down there is there, and it's essential to our town. And with a broad stroke of the pen that stuff has to go, who's gonna remove the snow? 2 years ago, we were buried in snow, and people were begging for snow removal. And we wanna, like, give them no place to go. It's ridiculous. And in case you guys didn't know, like, 2 people rode their bikes here. There's a ton of cars out there. And we have a lot of people working on cars on West River Street. Where are they gonna go? I mean, this is all like happy stuff here, but it's not reality. What do we have here? 20,000 people in town? 20 more thousand coming in the next 10 years? I mean, the more we build, the more is coming, the more stuff we need, and we're trying to squeeze every property owner, and we haven't even entertained actually everything that's there. For me, I think a lot of this is kind of ridiculous, because it's good stuff, but where's the bad stuff that everybody doesn't like? Where does that fit into this picture? It doesn't. I mean, Henriksen down there has a ton of people that work every day. That does your landscaping, that does your snow removal. He has a lot of businesses down there that are very essential to this town. Where are they gonna go? That's my 2 cents.
That's a great question. Anything else?
As a representative of historic downtown, there's a lot of great stuff here, and I really do like what we do have here. My comment would be to really look at what we have in downtown, and not necessarily be repetitive with what's already down there. So, I mean, workforce housing, I know that's something that we all talk about time and time again. I think that's really important for us to have some more housing there, but I look at this from the lens of what do we have in historic downtown already, and do we need to be repeating a lot of that stuff, or do we need to be building things that complement what we already have? So my thought is to look at what we do have and what can really complement what we have already, and not be too repetitive with that.
Can I ask, just to clarify, what do you see as complementing downtown?
So, I mean, just looking through here quickly, like some of the creating the handcrafted industries, small scale manufacturing, I would see something like that could complement some of the stores that we have downtown that are selling items like that. So some artistic stuff that can be then turned around and sold through an area like ours, I think could be beneficial.
So maker type.
Yes, yeah. And housing.
Yeah, I have a similar response to a lot of what's been voiced. One thing I would say, in contradiction with Jan Holland though, it's true that that literally not all of the parcels are riverfront, but in terms of relative to the town of Truckee, they're in the river area. So maybe there's a way to still acknowledge river, but not to not be as literal as riverfront. a common theme that's come up that I also struggled with is, and the survey actually was very useful in helping me clarify this. There probably are some uses that would be difficult for me to sign on to, but it's not the uses. So I was interested in this idea of the form-based. I realized in going through the difficulty in, ranking which yes, no, yes, no, yes with conditions, and then hearing about this idea of form-based, that really gets at the difficulty. So there's I think there's something in that idea that would resolve for me a lot of the conflict. And then that I was having in filling out the form. And then the third thing is, I don't agree with a lot of what Travis said, but a kernel in what he said was difficult, is ranking or rating a type of business does feel a little bit like passing a judgment. And that was a little tough to do. Especially we can't predict the future, so a little bit to what Brian was saying too, we don't even know what's coming in the future. So, yeah. Random thoughts, but there they are.
Yeah. Anything else?
I appreciate a lot of the comments, and I think flexibility was something top of mind, and Tim, I think similar to you, I think a lot of these I said yes, or yes with conditions, because you shared your story. I know I've heard from other folks who are looking to do things around town and have difficulty because it doesn't fit with the box that is very specific to wherever that business is. So I do think keeping that in mind, in being able to allow some flexibility and encourage innovation and creativity in how we use the space. Also, Jan Holland, you brought up the non-conforming issue, where if we don't allow some uses, well, it doesn't mean we're kicking those people out. They would be allowed to stay. What does that mean if they do want to revitalize their property? Are they stuck in some sort of purgatory because they can't make upgrades because they're no longer allowed? So I think that's another piece that's important to think about. On specific, even though I just said flexibility, I will just, because I think you said any on 1, 2, or 5. Offices, business, and professional. That one kind of stuck out as, is that the one we want in this area if we're trying to activate different uses and creativity, offices as accessory to primary use? That one just kind of stuck out to me. And then I do have a question on one in group 3, but I don't think we're talking about that yet till step 3. So those are my comments for now.
And just so I capture the offices piece correctly, are you saying that should be included or not?
Well,
So how you envision that activating?
Yeah, I would see it as not being included, but I just said we want to allow flexibility, and that's what I hear from folks. So I think my initial take was it shouldn't be, but if we're trying to be flexible, then maybe we do leave more stuff, so. That's it for now.
Great.
I just like to comment on a couple of things. The river corridor and riverfront, I think I agree with Lisa. This is the river corridor. Both sides of the road are the river corridor. Riverfront is obviously what's right on the river. So I think the importance of the fact that the north side of the road is corridor as well shouldn't be overlooked. I've attended a couple of classes on form-based planning. A very interesting concept. Takes a lot to get your head around it, but it's an interesting possibility, I think. The single-family housing in this area, my personal feeling about this property is that it's an opportunity for not having single-family housing, but having multifamily, because our community is so short on multifamily and so desperately in need of housing. We can't really grow without housing for the workforce. So I think, in my mind, this has always been an opportunity for this community to expand and provide workforce housing for any business in this community. So I think if that's a use that is prevalent on this property, then I think some of the things like offices make sense. You know, an insurance agent at AAA or some little office like that, or offices, places where you have daycare, offices that are service-oriented for communities, small communities. And this is going to be, like, I see it as a neighborhood, a new neighborhood for Truckee. And there are you know, restaurants, coffee houses, certain services, but minimizing the industrial uses, which I think we've stated here, minimizing or removing industrial uses, especially any industrial use that requires outdoor storage. So I think those are the things I noted here. I did have a quick question. I don't want to take more time than I'm supposed to, but land use 9.4, which we were given here to look at as elements, the last sentence has bothered me since we went through the general plan update. Create an employment district between West River Street and the Union Pacific Railroad to allow the relocation of existing industrial uses. Am I to assume that that would be in conflict with where this committee is heading for the property? Do we go back and, if this committee recommends other things and we rezone this property, do we go back and revise land use 9.4 with that statement, or possibly others that are in conflict with the recommendations of this committee? How does that work?
I mean, it's ultimately council's call, so I think as a committee, if you want to make recommendations, then you could make those recommendations. I think it just comes as a package, so it'd be hard to say at this point, like, what the.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Danielle.
Yeah.
You guys can't hear me? What I was saying is that it depends on what the full recommendation is from the committee, right? Because this is something that's coming out as a concept, but without understanding sort of what your full recommendation is, it's hard to say what council would want to decide with that. But I think if there's consensus that you would want to recommend the council revisit aspects of the general plan, then that's just another aspect of your recommendation.
And so I would say that we don't have to be limited by that.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to sort of what council, you know, wants to open up with the general plan or not. You can make changes to the general plan, you know, 4 times a year. Whether we would want to do that, I don't think so, but it is something that's possible. It's just kind of in that package of recommendations.
I mean, I think we started this process saying we knew there was probably some updates that were gonna have to happen. I think it's kind of incumbent on us to hear all your feedback, figure out what those adjustments would be, and have to present them in totality to the council if their feedback. I think that's kind of what you're suggesting.
Right, and whether it's at that level of importance that it needs to be modified versus what you come up with for recommendations for the specific zoning, the uses, kind of all of that.
I'd like this one bookmarked because it's a big statement, completely contrary to where we're headed.
Noted.
Thank you.
Since both Stephanie and Lisa had mentioned my comment about the zoning, I mean, I think I'm in agreement with both of you that we have a river corridor and we really want to be thoughtful about the whole river corridor. I guess what I was trying to imply that I think that when people think riverfront, they're thinking of riverfront property, and it may be different. There might be more different appropriate uses on Greg Hendrickson's property against the railroad somewhere far from Donner Creek and far from Truckee River. That might be slightly different than on a property I manage where there's 1,300 feet of riverfront. So I do think that we like, it's not that we forget about what's not on the river, it's just, you know, that it might make sense to be looking at those two areas with slightly different.
Lots of great comments. I don't think I have anything materially to add.
I agree with Jeff. My,
Really?
is that there's lots of great comments, and flexibility is probably my catchword that I would have said as well. And outdoor storage, I think, I just want to delve into that at some point, in that I think it's a broad category, and if you think of Mountain Home Center that has hot tubs and lawn furniture, are we really saying no to that? You know, where is the line? What, you know, if somebody wanted to open a kayak shop and they had their kayaks outside, is that no outdoor storage? So I think the detail, you know, the minutia is sometimes important to make sure that we're not disallowing things. You know, contractor yards, I think about Design Outdoors in Reno that has rock waterfalls all over it. You wander around and people buy stone and different beautiful rock sculptures. That's a contractor yard. So, you know, I love the idea of this form-based versus use-based, because I think we could get pigeonholed sometimes by the use that we're not allowed. And give up on a business that could, you know, be additive to downtown. I think Corey's comments are really great, and that we should look at downtown and not duplicate.
I have a question on the form-based. Is that something that the town of Truckee has done ever or is doing? And, okay, so no. So if we took this on, I just want to think about how equitable it is to do it in one area of Truckee and not the rest of Truckee, because the general plan changes zoning for a lot of areas. So if we're looking at this and being like, well, we can't make everybody happy, so we're gonna do this form, which I think the form-based thing sounds really cool. I don't know anything about it. It sounds like it'd be a lot of work for staff. But I think we're gonna run into Gateway being like, well, what the heck? Like, why can't we do it there? Or Pioneer, or so just for all of this, thinking about the equitability of that with the rest of our business community, right? So just
Yeah.
that in our minds. When we talk about flexibility too, it's partly there also. Like, I know, I can feel the emails like that I'm gonna get from businesses in other areas if we're allowing things to happen in this corridor that we don't allow in other places, as far as like flexibility and things like that, so.
That's a great question, and if you don't mind, I want you to answer, or Jen, maybe answer that. But before, I knew, Pam, you did have a couple of questions, and it might also be helpful, Danielle, for you to be able to clarify uses, because I think that's what you were asking, Pam, some of the use definitions, is that?
I really feel we're in a place that we have to think about the property owner and all the property owners and the opportunities and flexibility that we can provide them, and we've talked about that. So I was very confused by just labels of multifamily dwellings for rent, 2 to 10 units, multifamily dwellings for rent, individual ownership, 2 to 10 units, single room occupancy housing, supportive housing, multiple family dwellings and commercial industrial, transitional housing, multifamily dwellings for rent, 11 and more, multifamily dwellings, 11 and more units as well. And so I'd like to see definitions or clumpings. I mean, that just sent me wild. Thinking if I was a property owner, you know, what is going to be the best long-term use that will also benefit the community with all these different definitions? And what do we as a committee want to recommend that's best out of those definitions in this jewel box of an area?
So I'm taking you want to be on the planning commission.
No, I do not.
No, I think to some extent that, because those are the current lists within the current
Yeah.
development code, so that's where those came from. And I totally agree. I think as this group diving into every specific one, like live work versus work live, right? There's just the nuance of what's more primary, the working or the living. I think you just really see the trends, so that's what we were looking for as we were, getting the responses. Are there trends within the types of uses that point to, is it more mixed use industrial? Because that is a way that a number of different communities around the nation are actually looking at, reinventing and, redeveloping their industrial areas. And there's different categories of that, and this exercise helps us understand, what does that sort of look like? Are there trends in terms of things that said, no, we want to address these more deeply, or yes, we're all generally in alignment with over 60% of the things. Let's just really figure out, do we focus on, the 10 or 12, and maybe it is that we want to figure out, really deep guidelines that have to really address these 10, 20 uses. Where are we in alignment, and where do we need to really work?
Well, I want to flip that.
Yeah.
I want to do what's best for property owners and look at 10 years from now and what will be the most profitable, and still have something that's very flexible and entrepreneurial and the place in the river corridor that is amenable for housing. But what does that look like? And so more collaboration on these rather than just saying we need to do this and this. That's what I don't like.
And so if I take away that, I think leading into, the next agenda item with the RFI of like working with property owners.
Exactly.
For what's
And
envisioned for
obviously
them, and then
using
as well
expertise of staff with recommendations on those things, but yeah, I don't know what's best and most profitable and advantageous over time.
So I'm gonna write, wanting to focus on what's best and what's most profitable over
And
time.
advantageous.
And advantageous.
And what these definitions all mean. What does this look like?
Can I say something else? Do you have time?
Yeah.
So along the lines with what Pam and Travis are saying, as far as, but we haven't even gotten to the receiver site side of things. Ultimately, the goal of this committee is if it's not zoned properly for there, to give an option for a better spot in town. So I think that's being forgotten a little bit, but like, back to, I mentioned a few meetings ago about, land trades, or like if putting, because, I mean, I have the biggest construction yard on West River Street, and I'm gonna have to move, and I understand that, but I also understand, like, West River Street is not a good spot for us and our business to be located at, right on the river. I mean, that property is expensive property that should be used for trails and increase the value of Hendrickson's property, not decrease it. But I also see how the cost of improvements makes it almost impossible without something else in the equation. And that's back to what I mentioned a couple meetings ago, like if we can work something where, okay, we're decreasing the value because you have to put $10 million into this piece of property, but we'll give you a $3 million piece of property at this location, or whatever that is, to offset the, and I'm not trying to just give, we shouldn't be giving people certain things, but if it makes his property, where he's losing value in it because of all the rezoning, then shouldn't he get something to replace that value? Because it is, I mean, it's been like it is for, I mean, I walked around his yard yesterday, and there's trucks that have been parked for 60, 70 years on that property.
They're really cool.
They are cool.
Underutilized, comes to mind, underutilized.
Yeah.
They should be worth a lot.
No, your point is absolutely correct, and it's a big part of the RFI.
Yeah.
And it's, no one ever has thought that we are going to take and not replace. Like, that's not in any thinking at all. It's what is the best use for the land for Truckee over the time? And, and how do you make it more valuable both for the citizens and for the property owner? It's a shared use.
Right.
Right, and it's a collaboration. And we all believe that, that are here.
I'm going to interrupt quickly, Rolf, before you go, and then you. I want to make sure we have time to get to the RFI tonight, and that to be another fairly significant conversation. We have a number of people that may have to leave earlier. I know several people asked that we make sure we get out on time so they can go home. Whatever they'd like to do on election. So,
Jen, you're cutting out a lot.
Oh, sorry about that. So I'm gonna say we spend 5 more minutes on this and suggest to the chair consideration of moving to 6.4 next, and then we'll circle back and do river health and access update and receiver site update, if that's okay. Okay, so 5 more minutes, and Rob, sorry.
And listening to this, I find myself getting back to, this has been a subject, this river corridor thing, for 25 years or more now, and the struggle of flexibility and of some clarity of direction, because I know, again, one of the chronic, ongoing anguishes that people who do want to develop something say, and it's been brought up here too, is we don't know what you want, and sometimes you tell us what you want, and we do it, and then you say, oh no, we changed our minds. And so how do we manage that stress between having flexibility and having enough specificity so people know where to go? And that's, where the RFI thing, and I was really pleased to see that that's some specific progress of working towards something, rather than this almost impossible dance we are stuck in of not wanting to have things too black and white, and yet being able to work with situations uniquely. So I don't know the answer to that, because it's a huge struggle.
Well, I think that might be a lead-in, since I think we do probably want to wrap up this conversation. As a takeaway, I think a theme that I heard was flexibility. So I think coming forward for next month, I think that also leads into what we were considering in terms of thinking about, what would those guidelines look like? So what might be the different models for that? And we can touch base with the town to get a little bit more understanding, because I think your point is a good one, Jessica. It's can't be in a bubble. We're talking about the full town as well. So coming forward with, what flexibility might or could look like within the realm of, the types of uses that have been described, would that be a fair takeaway from tonight's discussion to bring forward? Okay, we'll move forward with that then.
Could if there's a second left, I wanted to clarify something Corey said, not to disagree with him, but he's speaking for the merchants in downtown Truckee. Downtown Truckee should not be a limiting factor for what develops at this site. Competition is a good thing, and this is like a new neighborhood. It needs beauty shops, physical therapists, it needs little stores, it needs coffee shops, it needs a lot of the things that we have in downtown Truckee. And I don't think anybody on the street downtown Truckee or in that area would be fearful of competition or not want this type of competition, because it betters this property and makes it more viable.
And
I just have to have one but.
maybe,
We also could use some of the things that will travel to Reno to get.
Yes.
So instead of the tax dollar leakage, not the big boxes, because I could just watch your face. But there are a lot of businesses that could be filled in.
Oh, absolutely.
That we
Absolutely.
could benefit from.
Absolutely, but duplication shouldn't be feared.
That was it was so easy. That was a good
maybe
line.
as a final comment on this, I'll look over to Danielle and Hillary, and perhaps for the next meeting, we can come back with a fairly brief discussion, like 5-ish minutes on form-based planning, so maybe everybody understands what that is, and that we haven't
I also wanted to say, I'm not sure, like, we got a word tonight from Jan
Yes.
Zabriskie, right? So maybe don't think we're being literal in saying we need a whole different paradigm for planning,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think that's, like,
I
we
agree.
got a concept where he defined a problem for us and gave us a word, but we don't know what that, none of us know what that
Yeah.
means.
What could flexibility look like?
Yeah.
Actually, Tony Lashbrook was in one of the classes I was in, and it didn't go anywhere here.
Do you want to comment? I don't think you're.
I think it's fine. I can give a kind of a 5-minute overview of sort of pros and cons of it, because I think you have to kind of get a little bit of that flavor to understand why we would or wouldn't want to use that as an approach. And maybe some alternatives also for what does flexibility mean, because I feel like in hearing some of this discussion, there isn't maybe a clear understanding of definitions either.
Right.
And they are very nuanced, and yes, there's some old ones in there, like structural clay that we were already talking about removing. But there are new ones that have been added in the last 3 years, like the handicraft industries, maker spaces, in response to feedback we've gotten from the community. So I think sometimes it's those small little words do make a difference in how those definitions are, and a lot of what you're saying you want to encourage is already in a definition somewhere in the code that you just weren't aware of.
Get on school schedule.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I'm going to open for public comment on this item. Thank you.
So the form-based, I don't know much about it, but I can clearly see what involved there. And I think there'd be like a third morph situation. I'm reading this stuff and there's no way, okay, you've got an RFA coming out. I'd love to be one of the guys that comes in and gives you an RFA. This is what I'd like to do. This is how I'd like it to work out. There's no way I can plan something off of this. I'm sitting here going, 12 houses, 11 houses, 3 houses, 4. So what am I gonna build? The person that's gonna come in and invest millions of dollars has to have a fairly clear idea of what is going to get rented. Not what everyone dreams of they'd like to see here. If you build the structure and you spent millions of dollars, you need a clear path that I can entertain quite a few different tenants, because I might get only 3 of what you want there, and I'm going to go bankrupt immediately. So the flexibility thing is huge, and it's 100% contrary with spelling out that you can have 4 units, 3 units, 5 units. It's opposite of flexibility. It is sitting in these little corners and making, so if you are a guy that's going to put on the table millions of dollars, it is super hard to go through here and go, what am I going to build that's going to work here? So maybe not form-based, but builder-based idea. The idea that if I make a place that manufactures things because 3D printing is becoming so powerful that they can just build it anywhere, and it's not a horrible, oh, it's manufacturing, but I don't want to build widgets that only can be sold to downtown. That's absurd. That I have to build trinkets that help downtown sell to tourists. I would like to maybe build widgets that are the most amazing little parts that we need that aren't built in China, but we can build them here because we can make 3D printers. And that, why would that be restricted there? As Tim said, I mean, you could have the most beautiful little manufacturing blacksmith shop right down there, but ooh, steel melting and stuff, that's just terrible. But you could have this beautiful thing that does this kind of stuff. So the idea of cutting that out, because this building had these 6 modules here, and this guy does something completely different from this guy, but it's completely consistent in some phase, but it would be thrown out that you couldn't rent to that other guy from some of this language that goes on. It's really hard for me to even see if this is going to help me or hurt me in being able to do a next step the way it is. So I'm thinking something form-based, something from a different standpoint would make it much more clear as to what could be built there that could return a profit, that wouldn't be built and then vacant because you couldn't get it in there. Maybe that's my 3-minute warning.
It is. I didn't know, thank you. Perfect. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Thank you. So at this point, I think we are going to move into the draft RFI review. So those members who have a conflict or need to recuse themselves, we're going to ask you to depart.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
we're going into that one now.
We're
And
going
then we're
into
going
that.
to,
And yeah,
Sorry about that.
otherwise we're not going to get
going
there.
out of order.
Yeah, so we're going out of order.
If you are departing because of a conflict and you're going to come back for the other items, you're welcome to go in the back room into the conference room, but please have to look.
Okay. Love to have you come back.
And if you would like to make a public comment, we can let you know when we're opening public comment for this item.
I don't need to make a public comment. I'll probably,
Don't forget to vote, Travis, you
That's
got.
where he's headed. I'm gonna tell Carissa.
Travis, are you recusing yourself or are you coming back? You're just going to vote?
Well, I probably need to recuse myself.
Okay.
Okay.
You can,
Play the game, right?
okay.
So I'm just gonna say, the last meeting, we had a number of people recuse themselves from the vote. It doesn't appear to be what's happening this evening, so again, just as
So we had, I
as a
think,
colleague, I'm just really
we had
reminding us all here.
Alicia Barr.
Alicia, who's not here tonight.
Yep, so Jan,
Yeah, Travis.
Travis, Tim. Who was the fifth?
No, I think Corey may have,
Oh.
and then we determined you didn't need to.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You staying?
It's a good reminder.
Yep, thank you. Great. I'm going to turn it back over to staff. Or Jeff, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff. Says
Right.
staff update and then over to Jeff.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce this topic. We have just, the goal is to be done within 30 minutes, and I think there will be a lot of agreement. There's a lot of information I want to go through fairly quickly. I'm gonna talk about the timing of this RFI, the process, the criteria and the goals of what's actually in the RFI, and then we need to vote to approve it. I'll just say, the last conversation, I actually held my comments really short, because I think anything I'm going to say is really going to be kind of covered in this window of time. And this RFI is the perfect segue from the last conversation. And, you know, the description of, do we get real general or very specific? You know, flexible for something that can actually be economically viable, or something that's going to put me out of business. And the conversation of where the committee has been, in my observation, for the year that we've been doing this, has been a very traditional top-down approach of government down. This is what we want. What we're proposing is a bottom-up to what is the entrepreneurial piece that the business and property owner, because they ultimately have all the skin in the game, and we meet in the middle. And this RFI would be potentially 3 projects. I say not 3 property owners or 3 business owners, but 3 projects that would help us ultimately as a town, I think, also learn. So it's a catalyst for the corridor, but it's really, town has a lot of skin in the game to learn from this as well. So with that said, I'm going to begin the presentation. So the first slide you see here is talking about the selection process, talking about the timing and how this would work. The intent, a couple variables. We're going into the holidays, so timing is not great. We also want to be responsive, so we're trying to use 30-day blocks based on when council meetings are, when the R2SC is meeting to do this. The other piece with this process, I'll talk about it in 2 more slides, is to also be respectful of the privacy of the business and property owners. Because any time we're in a forum like this, it's Brown Act. When the Economic Vitality Action Team meets, it's Brown Act. When a property owner turns in their form, it becomes part of a public record. So we're trying to balance the public openness and transparency with the privacy of the business owner. We think we've struck that here.
So first, assuming the RFI is approved, we would send out via multiple means. I think the primary would be the economic consultant that's talked to about 70% of the property owners already in the corridor, is to go back to them to say the RFI's on the street. I'm assuming it would be on the website, it could be in local print media, etc. With the intent, it would go out sometime in the next 5 to 7 business days. That gives the property owners 6 weeks. So 20th of December, applications turned in. After the holidays, we would have a Community Economic Vitality Action Team, which is Brown Act. We would screen the applications. It's a pretty generic, it's a very generic application. We would work with town staff. We'd also work with our our economic consultant. So depending on how many are there, these are the ones that are probably worth really looking at. And again, it'd be pretty generic because it's all public record. Then there would be interviews. We would create a subcommittee, because if the entire Economic Vitality Action Team does it, then it's a Brown Act and everything is said is done in public forum. So there would be a subcommittee of the Economic Vitality Action Team with the economic consultant. Probably there would be members from staff to do those interviews. And in the interview, we could have a really frank conversation, and then we could work with the business owner to say, what is it that you really want us to bring forth when we actually bring this to make a recommendation, and ultimately it's going to come to town council. So what are you comfortable saying? But we could do that in a forum that's private, yet at the same time the output is completely transparent. So we're trying to have that balance. So those interviews would be the deep dive, not Brown Act. The conversation would not be public record. The action team would meet on the 16th of January. It's a fairly aggressive schedule. We've talked about it internally. We'll make it work, and we would make recommendations. And then we would take that to town council on the 28th of January, and we would let the prospective landowners know that we're taking it to town council. So that is the timing of the selection process. Go to the next slide. I'll keep this fairly short, but just a little bit of the restore, revive, reimagine. And this is, I think we internally are pretty familiar with this. But the RFI that goes out to the corridor is a little bit, they have not been attending the meetings. I'll skip. Let's go to the next slide. This right here is really important. I think it encapsulates the last conversation and the tension of how are we specific? How do we become flexible? Is it form? Pam, I love the example of all the housing. I got frustrated taking the survey because I didn't know what most of it meant, and I thought I answered it. I actually went back going, did I redo that? And then no, there's nuanced differences, and it's exceptionally frustrating going through it. At the same time, there's no one that's being disingenuous or malfeasant in what's happened in the past. There were smart, intelligent people running the town that it ended up in the code. The intent here is we can work through some of this. We can afford some flexibility. We can take specified staff time. We can work with planning. We can work with legal counsel. We can work with design group. We can work with BAE to have that conversation of how to navigate this. Ultimately, that becomes a catalyst of change on the river corridor. And again, it's the partnership, it's the entrepreneurial aspect, because it's going to be the property owner with all the skin in the game. We have our skin in the game is to learn from this, and then in future years, 5 to 10, 20 years, maybe the corridor looks different and has different businesses and has some mixed-use housing that we're all talking about. But I think it's important. It's a catalyst for change. We learn from this to how we have these conversations. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Who's on the Economic Vitality Action Team? I think this is important because I'm sensing some trust. Or who are these folks? Because these are just recommendations. It'll be town council deciding. So it's Jan Zabriskie, who's on town council. Myself, I work at the airports. Was in the military for almost 30 years, just retired. Pam Hobday, who professionally has done this in other communities in terms of economic development and revitalization. Corey Caldwell, who's on the Downtown Merchants Association, and we have 3 other members. So we have Laura, who's here this evening. She works for Microsoft, has a wealth of background in technology and STEAM education. Jason, who's also here, he's worked for the McKinsey Group. He's done economic development literally around the world in various countries, has lots of economic background of doing this. And Michael, who's not here but works for the state of California, is a lawyer and works in this space of law with the Assistant District Attorney of California. So there's a lot of background. And to be quite honest, when we did the interviews for the 3 additional people, we're basically getting free consultants. There's lots of depth and background of folks that have actually done this, both in the U.S. and abroad, and have a deep economic background. In fact, sometimes their conversations with our economic consultant, I feel like I'm listening to a different language. So there's a lot of background. These are not just random folks that kind of raise their hands. Okay, next slide. So there's a packet that everyone has, and hopefully you had time to read it. So in the big, thick packet, I think everyone got these. It starts on page 59, which is the actual RFI. If you want to go to that, you can. I think just in the interest of time, if you want to flip through on page 59, but we give background as to the why. What is the Catalyst project? It's intended to be achievable 1 to 5 years. We want to hear the business and property owners' visions. 3 projects. A project, again, could be multiple property owners or multiple parcels of land, but 3 projects. What we offer, ultimately, it's staff time, it's targeted staff time, which is invaluable, especially in this space. Economic consultant time, and helping the business property owner with a focused revitalization plan. And then the last bullet there on page 61 for what we offer is to identify those barriers to implementation, which is where the town gets to learn from this. Page 62 just says for the application is simple, no site plans, no architectural drawings, just if you're interested, let us know. The selection process, I talked about that on our first slide. Page 63 at the top, potential project types sought, riverfront property, outdoor storage, potential relocation. We talked about, Tim mentioned it in terms of screening, and then it says pedestrian cyclists, but I would say outdoor space. Those would be the types. Selection criteria. What we're looking at is someone that's willing to be collaborative in a partnership with the town. We're also looking at a variety of types, but not 3 different projects that are solving the same type of problem. Ideally, 3 different types of projects where we get 3 different learning outcomes. And that there also has to be alignment with the R2SC, the 2040 General Plan, the 2005 Plan. A lot of the things that have not been super specific, but as Stephanie elucidated tonight, we have a vision, we can't always articulate it, but there's alignment with the business property owner, with the town's goals. Also on page 63, there's a list of the goals: workforce housing, river health, stormwater improvements, river access, traffic calming. There's a couple of photos on page 64 that you've seen before. Page 65 talks about town support. Also on page 65 talks about some constraints, just to be clear about what it is not. I think it's important. The town has talked through this and talked with council. The process will not be used to trigger code enforcement. And if a landowner says, I'm willing to work with this, here's my vision, we're working through it, and there's other code violations, the intent is not to write the landowner up on future code violations. However, if that landowner were to begin some type of new construction or project and there was a code violation as we were in that partnership, then that could have them removed from the project. And then lastly, on page 68 has the actual form, and we went back and forth multiple times, and this form is pretty generic. And again, it's to protect the land business owner's privacy. But are you interested in revitalizing your property? What do you see as barriers? Are you willing to partner, and will you work collaboratively? And that would be a public document. So the question then, back to the slide you see here, is this, we have technically it's 19 minutes, I would say. We should probably give ourselves, how much conversation is here.
Yeah, I want to make sure Pam has to leave at 6:50.
Oh, 6:50, okay. Pam or Laura,
I
or
wanna
Jason,
say
anything else I
something
mentioned?
else.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff, for that
Yep.
thorough presentation. I just wanted to talk from my heart about why I talked about this RFI, why I presented this concept. Oftentimes in these projects, we get so passionate and caught up in what we're doing. And we forget that the property owners actually are put in a position, or might feel they're being put in a position of having to constantly respond, or, feeling like we have all felt in different situations. And I really thought long and hard about this. And the committee talked in great detail about this. And the concept is to flip this project. It's to pivot. And so when you think about a pivot, it's hard to do when you're working with government. It's really difficult midstream. But the idea would be, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had 40 property owners that filled out this one page and that were really interested in exploring in a different way and not feeling on the defensive at all? And that we eliminate that barrier and we provide staff and a collaborative approach with our consultants and our teams to really listen to their dreams, or to explore with them what maybe their grandfathers talked about. And my experience has been that when property owners are approached that way, and then staff is able to add, well, would you ever think about this? And it becomes brainstorming together. Magic happens. Magic begins to happen. And it only takes a few catalyst projects to begin turning this entire area into, this treasure box, this heart. Remember, everybody talked about the heart at our first meeting. And so I just wanted to add that passionate part for you to consider. Because the key would be that the property owners will be able to feel genuinely part of a collaborative partnership.
I just want to add really quickly, thanks, Pam, a couple things. Laura and Jason are in the audience, the Economic Vitality team, and I do want to acknowledge this has been a pretty quick turnaround for us in doing the RFI that's not as familiar to the government, and then getting feedback from the committee. I think we caught all of your edits. There was one change that we made that we didn't talk about, and that is taking this to council. I do have to get it to them in some form, so we worked that in. Wanted to point that out.
I saw that.
And then for Greg in particular, because you're the property owner in the room, your previous public comment, the form is really simple, and that was very intentional, as Jeff and Pam have spoke about. I think it's important to reiterate, you don't need a vision. We just want to have a conversation. If any property owner is interested, we're not expecting them to come with a pen or plans. This is the start of a conversation. I thought that was important to reiterate. No, I'm done.
Okay. Any more economic vitality member
anticipating questions I would have as a council member, and maybe we can eliminate some of those tonight. But one of the things I would want to know is why the identified goals don't include compliance with the general plan, recognizing steps question, which essentially was if there's a conflict, the answer being if there's a conflict with the general plan, it means amending the general plan. For now, I would say we should be also saying one of the goals is to comply with the general plan. And then also an item we haven't discussed yet is the memo on the river health and access, the principles and goals there. It lays out these environmental requirements. One of the goals would be to have a development comply with those principles and goals. Beyond that, in terms of cost, if I were sitting on the council, which it turns out I am, I would want limits on staff time and cost to the town, because the town has so many other things it's involved in. I wouldn't want open-ended staff guaranteeing that we're going to see this all through to an indefinite end. There's too much competition for a lot of housing programs and other items. I want to put a cap there. And then this program also includes a reference to consultants. We're going to provide consultants to assist in this. The council's going to say, oh, how much are we going to spend on consultants? And realize the council members all have their own individual priorities, which may be a higher priority for them than us. So I think it's important to put some kind of time and financial cap on, as well as what the end product would be. And then, is that it? Oh, in terms of not enforcing the code, if it's a health and safety issue, if it's bare wires in the building that I see, the sprinklers aren't working, if there's a safety issue or toxic waste flowing out of the property, I'm going to want enforcement. I don't know that we could waive that either. So I don't know if saying we won't enforce the development code still allows us to enforce the health and safety provisions the town has, and the environmental provisions or not, but if it does, that might be the solution. Limited the development code compliance.
I think maybe I should respond to some of your points for the rest of the committee. I think if we add in compliance with the general plan, that's going to be problematic, because we know that there's things that are probably not in alignment. So it's going to either constrain the conversation, which is maybe the intention, but I don't know that it will welcome the flexibility that you all just previously talked about. So maybe something for the committee to weigh in. In terms of the river health principles and goals, I think because we kind of went out of process here with our numbering, and then also, that's still kind of wrapping up, maybe we can work that into the partnership agreement in terms of what we're proposing with each selected catalyst site. We can reference the draft that we have in the RFI if that's the committee's wish. Limits on time and cost, I think we had some conversation about that in our action team. We tried to throw out reasonable, what does that mean? I think that's another place that could get worked into the participation agreement as to so if we have 3 adjacent properties coming in together as a project, that's probably more time that we're willing to invest versus a very small half-acre parcel. So maybe it's dependent on the selected sites, and we work that into participation that the council will approve.
Code violation.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for that one at the moment. Let me noodle.
Danielle, do you know offhand, does the development code include any health or safety issues? Does it address?
I mean, we have our code compliance section, which talks about nuisances. So a lot of times when we open a code case, it's based on that, and then it carries over into something that's not compliant with the building code. But things don't get resolved, immediately. So even if we decided we wanted to identify something, there's usually a plan of approach on how to respond to that. So like unpermitted housing unit or something that popped up in an industrial area, right? We would identify that and say, you know, we haven't done a full inspection of this, but here's what we're observing, we don't have a permit for this, like, we need to talk about how we're gonna address this. So it's a, yes, we do identify those things, but we also have to identify and plan to resolve them. So the code gives us that flexibility with identifying that it's a nuisance or within that, you know, life safety issue.
Let's spend some time
Okay.
and maybe hear from the rest.
Yeah.
I was gonna go back to the economic vitality team that's here to say, ask if you guys had comments. I do want to allow enough time for the committee members, so.
Hey, one last thing, on town support, that should be either staff support or economic vitality action team support. Because we can't have the town council saying it's gonna support something that hasn't come before.
You've moved on to questions and comments. I was still trying to get to the economic vitality.
Oh.
So, you were supposed to be part of the economic vitality. Okay. Please.
Nothing that I would considerably add at this point. I think I'm really keen to hear the committee's observations and feedback, and can reserve any comments at the end.
You can
Say,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thank you very much. Committee members, if we just go around the room again, and if you don't have anything, great, but if you do, please. Steph, we'll start with you. No?
Just the consistency issue
Okay. Consistency with?
with development code, I mean, the general plan and
And-
the codes.
And I'm gonna just, like, I think if we don't stretch that a little bit, that we've constrained, like, to me, that was part of the purpose of forming this committee, was to make sure that that the general plan either we could be consistent with it, or maybe we decide we
And make
don't
those
want to be.
changes. I'm just concerned with what Jan just said.
I agree, but I would push back to council and say you have to allow a little, this is part of
This needs
the-
flexibility. If
Yeah,
it's
the
That's why it's
RFI
catalyst with 3.
Yeah, that's right. We're
The
trying to
the
find what the
Economic
issues
Vitality
are.
Action Team is gonna screen for that and take it to town council. And if it's out of alignment with something, one, as the chairman of the Economic Vitality Action Team, I wouldn't recommend it. We've all talked about it, we wouldn't recommend it, because I think it would put town council in a bad position.
Yep.
So we will find alignment. We're trying to leave the RFI as generic and welcoming as possible, such that the land and business owner is willing to have the conversation. And the questions and comments we're having right now harken back to the conversation of the last topic of specific or general, specific or general. It's a tightrope to walk. This becomes the way to walk the tightrope, limiting it to 3. As Jessica mentioned, well, what about everyone else? That's why it's a catalyst project limited to 3, for us to learn and to create the catalyst.
Sounds good to me. I think that the key here is to try to make this work. And I was just suggesting this might be a hurdle. And if it's
Yeah.
not, and the committee can do that, I think that's wonderful. That's where we want to be.
Yeah, overall, I appreciate the committee's work on this. I think having the application interest form be very generic is a great idea. I had similar concerns to Vice Mayor of ensuring this isn't an endless process that, I know it says 1 to 5 years, but even thinking of 4 years of staff time, that's a big endeavor. So ensuring through the interview process and whatnot, having the clear, this is the timeline, this is what could be dedicated, so that's brought to council and all council members have an understanding of what time and resources we're committing to.
And just to clarify, I interpreted the 1 to 5 year conversation in the action team as to see something happen on the river.
That's correct.
Not town staff is working towards a vision for that in 1 to 5 years. Like,
Yeah, we actually have the projects built.
Yes,
And can we
yes.
clarify what we're giving, what do they come away with in this process? Because I think that's where, I don't think they come away with a project, they come away with a plan. And that's, I'm confused, what do they get at the end of this RFI
I think it depends
process?
on the property owner and the options.
Well, I think it's really important that they know what they get, and that's very clearly laid out and spelled out, Because
We can add
then
that.
I think there's contention at the end, if people don't get what they thought they were gonna get.
Are
Yeah,
you
and-
comfortable if that clarity exists in the partnership agreement?
I think
Since it
it's-
does depend on each property?
Yeah.
I think at least a general outline of what people should expect should be in this, you know, the what we offer.
And I think there should be some wording somewhere about that partnership agreement in here. You will, when you are chosen, a partnership agreement will be created that outlines X, Y, and Z, because it doesn't say that in this. And I do think that if you haven't worked with the town before, you might not know, like, you've
Right.
gotta sign things like that. So putting that in here somewhere, I think would alleviate some of the same nerves that I think I'm having as other people.
Sorry, Lisa,
I appreciate Jeff's emphasis on saying that the opportunity for us, the town and us, is a learning opportunity. But that's not really all it is, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's substantially more than that. And on page 65, under the town support bullets, like, that's right now, the way it's stated. My question to the staff and to the chair was, really? Is the town really gonna deliver this? These 5 bullets here are significant. It's significant. If you apply for the RFI, you're selected, you get these 5 bullets? Like,
The bullets
And
are very generic. They're not defined.
It does say may include, I guess, too.
it does say may include, yeah.
Yeah, and
But,
like.
but again, I'm
yeah.
considering, I'm not really saying this from our point of view, I'm saying this,
Yeah.
I'm a project proponent. Am I gonna, anyway, you get my drift.
No, yeah.
I think that,
yeah.
I
Yeah, and
think
we
that
went
Jessica's
through,
point about.
Yeah. I'm
Steve-
gonna sound defensive.
Yeah.
I'm not. We've had all these conversations, and I don't mean it in a
Yeah,
bad way, of, we need to truncate it, we need to put $1, we need to put an hour, like, no, that'll turn people away, let's keep it generic,
Agreed.
let's not say anything.
I think she gave you the
So
pass.
it's,
I think she gave you the pack. You say in here that there will be a participation agreement,
Right.
which will specify, based on the
Yeah,
demands and needs
that's
of the
a really good way
project,
to-
Yeah.
which will specify
yeah,
what the resources available will be.
Will
I
be.
think she gave us
So
the
as a suggestion, we did put that in there, but it's not very elaborate. It's on page 61 under what we offer. Maybe we call out in another subheading,
yeah.
partnership agreement,
I think it's
and
at
be
the
more
end.
specific
Yeah.
as to what will be in there,
Yeah.
would be
And
it.
maybe somewhere in that is also something about what you get at the end, like, in some kind of ephemeral way, I don't know, cause we don't really know, and I understand that, but I think they do need to think.
Expectation.
Expectation of what they would want, and we do have a business owner here, so maybe we should ask them what he would want, but, yeah. I think
And
that's my
they
own-
might not all, fair enough, going into the RFI, to
No.
earlier discussion, they may not know either, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
And that's part of what happens with the development of the participation agreement.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's easy reading this, I just would submit, it's easy reading this to interpret me as a project proponent, like, I'm gonna leave with my project as the catalyst project. And let's hope that is what happens, but it, yeah, I'm done.
Cory?
And that,
My only other comment is that I appreciate that it's not super government-y speak, and I know that that was partly Pam, but it's very easy to read, so.
I have a
You
hard
did
time
that.
with that because.
I know, because you're looking at it as a government document, but I appreciated that, yeah.
What is this? Tim?
Like I mentioned at last meeting, I still have my reservations just because of being partial and picking property owners and not allowing all of them the same opportunity. And I don't think there's that many property owners that are gonna really wanna, I mean, they might have an idea of like, hey, what can I do here? But in reality, that's like a 1 or 2 day conversation, you know, and once the dollars start flowing, the financial review of it, they're gonna be like, oh, well, yeah, someday, maybe, you know, and they're gonna walk out. And then there's gonna be the few like Jan and Alicia maybe that will benefit from it. So for that reason, I'm not for it being just a 3. I think it should just open to everybody, but then cap the time and dollar amount spent to based on the size of the property. So if it's 10 acres, they get X amount of time. If it's 2 acres, they get a different amount or whatever. But that's kind of my opinion.
I think you would make a good point there, Ellen, but I think maybe this catalyst results in that. Like, to start somewhere and see what we get out of it, and maybe it does become something that, you know, generates.
Well, I mean, I
that
think that
future.
Yumi, I own the old urgent care, and I'm dealing with Gavin Ball and Yumi on it, and I put it on hold because I've had so much stuff going. But Yumi, the last time, she actually gave a lot of like good input of like, hey, well, this is how you could make this work, and I think like the staff doing that is super helpful for people that not just a checklist of nope, you can't do that, nope. So, and then the other thing I was going to say is I'm on this other project. I'm going through the minor use permit process. So I mean, it's $150,000, and I don't even own the property, just to see if I can get if the town will approve it, and then if they approve it, then I purchase and build. But so there's a lot of things where if you go through this whole process, is that saying that this project's now approved and we're set? Because then at that point, then you have to go through all the town approval processes. And how much money is that to get to that point where?
It does read the tone, I don't think it literally says that in here, but the tone leads a person to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joey, I think why that, like, this is what you get at the end piece is important.
Yeah.
So,
What we had talked about, and what Aaron, his brief presentations here many times, a number of towns and cities have done ombudsman programs to guide processes, and so we had talked about doing something like that. And in the conversation with Pam and Aaron and the team, that by doing the 3 Catalyst project, what I talk about town learning, kind of what you mentioned, Tim, is that there's the partnership agreement working with planning to help expedite, remove that anxiety and some of that risk. It's not going to be that, boom, your project's approved, go, but to help guide and navigate that process to a point where if you're a developer, business, property owner, you're much more comfortable taking that risk, having been guided through that process. I think the partnership agreement, I think we need to, that's during the interview process, the partnership, if we're actually, you're selected, being very clear with, this is really what the expectation is.
so,
I had a question about the, potential project types sought. And I was thinking specifically, since I live near there, of those historic buildings down there adjacent to the park. Those properties don't seem to fit into the types of people you're looking for this project, and I'm wondering why. I don't know if there's other properties on the corridor that are similar to that.
Ralph, can you say that properties that are similar to?
To that,
The cottages.
Oh, the cottage.
The cottage.
yeah, the cottages and those 2 single-family dwellings next to them, if there's other of that kind of stuff along the corridor that needs renovation and stuff, but that, whatever categorized that, doesn't seem to be captured in this, on the project types there on page, what is it, 63?
63, yep.
Well, I think if they fit in the workforce housing, it could be.
Yep.
You think what?
If they fit in workforce housing,
You also,
oh, I'm looking at
But not limited
it in
to.
the goals.
Perhaps we add workforce housing outside. Workforce housing is listed elsewhere, but it was not repeated in that bullet there.
Could add that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I didn't,
Good.
if this implies that there's certain
Right.
Well, I-
specific types of properties you're
Yeah.
interested in working with, that then eliminates, say, this type of thing. I would hope you'd want anybody who,
Can we add that?
Yeah,
Yep.
There's
What are you adding?
consensus.
some sort of housing,
for-
properties that would lead to workforce housing.
Workforce housing.
That would lead to it. Yeah. My concern is the fact that it says deed restricted workforce full-time residential housing incentives for.
Yeah.
That worries me. What does that?
So,
What
maybe
page?
let's clarify.
I'm sorry,
I think,
65.
Rolf's suggestion was gonna be added on page 63 under potential project type sought. And there was a suggestion to add a bullet point for workforce, projects that would develop workforce housing. Under the section you're referencing, staff, on page 65, town support, incentives for deed restricted workforce housing. What we were referencing there was the town's currently
Existing
either
programs.
THAP or the new deed restriction program that's already in place. These projects could qualify to use those.
Qualify, okay. They wouldn't be giving a waiver for them.
They would be able to take advantage of those programs.
Thank you.
Maybe we need to clarify that.
Yep, clarify that.
You're on eligibility on page 61.
That was on
65.
Page 65, town support, last bullet.
Okay, then what about eligibility on page 61? Is that a commercial site then?
Oh, eligibility.
But it could be a mixed use.
What's your question?
He's wondering if it's not eligible because it doesn't fit in this category.
Right.
Use industrial manufacturing or adjacent.
And are there any completely unused properties, completely vacant properties?
So would the intent be, or the suggestion to add vacant properties to the eligible current uses, but not currently used as residential? I think what I understood the committee was trying to do was not have this eligible for something that's already a single-family residence to like restore a single-family residence. So if we added currently vacant, then that would capture things like those properties that are residential that aren't currently used because they're not in a state to be used.
And property that's vacant,
Yeah.
Yeah.
vacant of everything,
Yeah.
except trees and shrubs.
If we included vacant properties and uninhabited residential, or
Yeah, uninhabitable.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's good. Ryan?
Lots of great comments. I don't need to repeat some of my same concerns. I think when we talk about Catalyst and some of the points that are made by Lisa, Jessica, and Tim, that we're clear in the front end of this. I really appreciate the approach of staying at 30,000 foot, making it nimble, making it simple, kind of all the characteristics that are non-government, just really trying to make it opportunity there. But be careful that we're also not compromising or creating a risk of breaking trust in this whole project. And that there's there's been some vocal skepticism along the way. Don't create more of that by kind of the
Overpromising,
imagery
underdelivering.
of not delivering on what this can deliver on. So some of the wording needs to be probably a little bit more clarified in terms of what the end product will be. I think it's a great start. It's making sure that we're continuing to build trust throughout this process.
Is it, I'm asking a clarifying question. it's not code for an agenda. Is it the case that a property owner that might want to go to a receiver site, that's not part of the RFI possibility?
Yeah, it could be.
So.
It was in there.
It's under potential project.
Under
Oh, okay,
project
sorry,
SOT.
I missed that, sorry. It's good to know, it could be one of them.
So we have about 5 minutes left in the meeting, and I guess an overarching question is, this was, the wish of the action team was to get this out as soon as possible. We're hearing a lot of comments. I guess what's the comfort level in where we're at and our ability to address maybe what we think we've heard without it coming back versus trying to bring it back?
I have a proposal.
Yes, we'd love to hear solutions.
This is asking a lot of Jessica, but I would offer that if you guys go through another, if the action team goes through, action team and staff, go through another round of revision, and if Jessica would be willing to read it, and you might not be, I know, you might not want to do it, I get it. It's a proposal, it's not a directive, it's a proposal. I would be comfortable going ahead. Other people might not feel the same way, but.
Can I counter, what if we, so I'm gonna go back to 30,000 feet. We've been here for a year. The timing, so we can, so the answer, yeah, we can absolutely do that. It will probably delay everything 60 days, so
Well, you know
because of
you
the
have to do a
holidays.
revision, right? You know you have to do a revision.
We do have to do a revision.
Yeah.
But then that's 30 days. Our next meeting for the steering committee is
December
December 3rd.
December 3rd. I don't think it's realistic to put this out on the street December 15th. Shake the trees, because we had this conversation. So, more behind the scenes, we talked long and hard about the timing of this and how we could do this with the holidays, be responsive, but still do it the right way. I guess is what I would do is to trust staff and the action team to incorporate the changes we did here. The RFI ultimately is still going to be exceptionally generic with no promises, intentionally. And during the screening process, we can be more specific, and we can still incorporate some of that language now. And it would still go to town, right now it's not going to town council till the end of January. So basically it's the 1st of February, you know.
What are you saying right now, it goes to town council at the end of January?
Yeah, the recommendations that these would be the 3 projects and
Right,
why.
got it. Great.
Right now it's the 20th of January. So if we bump it a month, based on the holidays, I would say the RFI doesn't go out until after the 1st of the year. So I don't think it's fair to send out an RFI on December 19th. So the RFI goes out in January, and then we're making selections, bringing it to town council in March. So it's like a 60-day delay. And I think it's possible to incorporate the discussion here tonight without having to make revisions, come back here again already on agendas that are really tight. We only did half of it tonight. I think it's possible.
Jen, do you have, or Hillary or Kaylee, a list of maybe the suggestions that were just made that we could run through?
Yep.
And that could be the motion is
Yep.
approval with understanding of
These caveats.
these caveats, and then
We also need public comments still before we take a motion.
before we do that. But I think maybe that is a way to kind of try to capture everything that was just said
Right.
and move it forward without that 60-day
Yep.
delay. Because that is a long
Agreed.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With some grace in between the 3 of us, we can probably, we all have notes.
So I'm
Okay.
gonna open public comment first anyway, and so you can. I'll open for public comment. Everybody has 3 minutes, we're gonna.
I'll
try and keep
take
it-
much less. The form that I see here, if I didn't miss some fine print, I would fill out today and hand it to you on the way out. And I'm gonna be gone for a couple of months, and I don't know how to follow up on this in an appropriate way to not have it go, well, this wasn't done, and it just ended up in the trash can. So I like the 30,000 feet approach. I think the discussion, which is going to be complicated, is what is it, what am I proposing? That, yeah, I'd like to do something, yeah, I'd like to do something and cooperate, yeah, I'd like you guys to make it easier, sure. So to me, that's done already. If there's a little bit of trust here, that you're just not gonna toss mine in the can for a more profitable, more whatever project that I just have no chance of getting it. I think that's Tim's point, was that I think there's gonna be a couple that are gonna win here, and it's not gonna really it's gonna be a couple of pet projects go on. So, but I would apply right now as it is, with a little bit of trust that maybe you guys will try and even the playing field and not just put a powerful, already expensive place that's already ready to go and just has been denied or had problems along that now you can solve all my problems. And the one last thing I would say is that I would think that you would want to take these 3 projects and see whatever you do for these guys, you might want to do for everyone that follows. That's the point, is that maybe we've made a roadmap that it says, would you like to eliminate barriers? If those barriers get eliminated for those 3, I hope you're gonna eliminate those barriers because they were reasonable to eliminate for everyone that wants to follow. Because having 3 projects succeed and everyone all clamps back down and it's business as usual, I think makes no sense. Okay, so I hope.
And I think I just want to clarify, anyone who applies will be interviewed.
No, not as presented. We can't.
Because well, your application is so generic.
How would you know?
I do not know how you're going to select based on that application.
Sure, a clear example, single-family home on the river wants to improve their, single-family home on, if there are 2 people that apply, both will get interviewed. I think the screening for who gets interviewed will be very generic and broad. I think the conversation was, if we get 75 and there are properties that just don't make sense based on, the size, literally, it's a single family home, on the river, and they say, well, I want to add a boat ramp so they can drive to Tahoe, or it's something that's very unfeasible from the generic application, we would not interview them. I think most would be interviewed.
Because they wouldn't be eligible based on what I just understood we wrote in the eligibility. So if they're eligible, I think it's,
We can interview them all.
yeah.
If they meet the eligibility, I mean, it's either that or complicate the application, which you don't want to do.
Which we don't want to do.
Which you don't want to do.
Right, I just wanted to.
So we can interview them all.
If they're eligible.
If they're
right?
If they're eligible.
If they're eligible.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
That'll be a caveat.
So with that, I'm gonna start, and let's see what I'm missing in my notes. We will repeat the statement on page 61 about the partnership agreement at the end and be more specific about what that will entail. Perhaps under eligibility, we add all eligible properties per below will be interviewed, just to make that very clear. We are not adding in anything about the general plan compliance. I didn't hear that. River health principles and goals, we can reference what's been provided so far and then give a link to that. In our acknowledgement of the partnership agreement, we will outline that we will come to an understanding about limits on time and costs that will be allocated to each project site. We can work through, I still don't have a great answer, I think, on like health and safety, but maybe there's a few things we can acknowledge that should we get on the property and there is raw sewage running down the property or significant health safety things, those are exempt. We can try to clarify that and perhaps work those into questions in the interview process as well and or clarifying statements in the interview process. We're adding under, it's on page 62, but it's under eligibility, vacant properties and uninhabitable housing is eligible. Adding workforce housing to the potential project type sought. I think based on the conversation, we probably need to add a little bit about what council is approving on the 28th January meeting, or whatever meeting that that date was, so that it's very clear to selected or recommended property owners, they should wait to that council approval of the participation agreements. Town support.
The incentives
And for the
for
incentives,
clarify.
we will talk about it being
Existing.
existing town programs and being eligible to use those. And that we will clarify in there that specifics for each property will be agreed upon in partnership agreements. I didn't hear any concerns with the constraints outside of the like health and safety issues for code. So we're gonna clarify that there. And that's all I got. What did I miss?
It clarifies existing, I think it says new code cases or something. It should be existing non-compliance.
Well, so we
new
have two
cases.
pieces here. Our intention was two different pieces. One is if you are selected and we come onto your property to help think about what your vision is and identify a existing code case, we're not going to start a code process on that. That was an agreement we were willing to make.
A new code.
We heard from you all
Yeah.
that if it's a significant life and safety thing, we're
That's
changing
different.
that.
Right,
The
right.
second component to that was, we're working with you, we're 3 months in, and you all of a sudden build an unpermitted housing unit. If it's a new case, like that's not a good partnership. So the new case would be subject to code.
A new violation.
Yes.
During the partnership.
So if that's not clear, that was our intention.
What Brian said in terms of tone, that someone, because there's a couple of places where we can be more specific with overstatement
Okay.
of just some softer language to not overstate that you're getting architectural designs.
Okay.
I think my only thing that I still don't know if is clear is like what you're getting. Like that piece, like I do think it has to be somewhere, like you are walking away with a vision or a plan.
So that's where we said we were gonna add language that town and selected property owner would come to agreement
Okay.
in that for the partnership agreement.
I think that's
Because I
fine
think
then.
we're in this,
We're
each
in a weird-
property's different and
Yeah,
we don't wanna overcommit, so if we
Yeah,
just
or
acknowledge.
undercommit, I guess,
or
either,
undercommit,
yeah.
and we want, acknowledge we'll work through that in the partnership
Okay.
agreements.
I think that's fine then.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's like that is very well said under that partnership agreement, like, I think that's my only thing. I think it's more actually that we don't wanna undercommit. I think we might get into these and figure out we can do some really cool stuff and move it forward pretty quickly, and we don't wanna be like, oh, but we said we wouldn't do that,
We're
you know?
constrained.
Yeah.
The only other two
Flexibility.
things I had on my list were under potential project types as well as under eligibility add projects that include workforce housing units.
Yep.
And then, with the clarification, make sure it's clear that what you're coming away with is generally is not gonna be like land use entitlements,
Yep.
it's the planning that'll lead you there.
Yeah, perfect. I think that,
So with that, I'd call for a motion to approve the RFI if as amended.
I'll motion to approve the RFI as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions, and two recusals? Motion carries. We have 2 items left on our agenda, but we are over time. So we can either just defer these to our next meeting, or we can stay.
I suggest we defer them.
I would like, if you don't mind, ask, because I know Maggie's here from the River Health.
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I will, we can do quick committee member updates if anybody wants to say anything. Any committee member updates?
I'll wait till next time. I was going to give them, but I think it's getting late for everybody.
Okay. So we have no committee member updates, so I will adjourn this meeting to the December 3rd meeting at 5:15.
It was a very good meeting. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brought a lot to us. Thank you.